is here to stay. It is definitely going to be one of the very important technologies that is going to shape the future of business, future of technology, and future of a lot of things.
I believe that this is going to change the way existing applications work. We are seeing already on Microsoft products that how it is changing the way that access products.
There's code generation happening with AI. I think the programming jobs will not go away. It's just the programmers who know how to use Gen AI and become more efficient.
Product managers, designers who need to really get the help from engineering team to show an MVP. They don't need to rely too much on engineers. They can come up with their own MVP product, show the customer in a shorter cycle time.
A good example would be the automatic number plate recognition VR. So that the camera is sitting there in the traffic section that you all come to love and gate. That thing has enough intelligence to be able to raise the challan right there. It doesn't have to go to the cloud, then it has challan. So these are 2-3 areas that a lot of us in the academia working with the industry and students are super excited.
Thank you all very much, and it's impossible to have a conversation these days without mentioning Gen AI. And actually the best way to raise money these days for companies is to just add .ai to their startup. You'll definitely find an investor in Bangalore who will give you money. But on a serious note, we're doing this panel on Gen AI and beyond, how academia and industry can prepare for upcoming disruptions. In a week where people are very, they have very mixed sentiments about generative AI, because after the hype cycle, people are now asking if this hype was justified. We've seen chip stocks like Intel slide. I think Nvidia's new chip has already been deferred. Gartner came out with a report recently which said at least 30% of POCs will not go through. So it's an interesting stage in the whole Gen AI cycle. People are saying that it's perhaps reached the trough, in the whole hype cycle, because people don't know if this is a solution looking for a problem. So that's where we are. I'd love to get opening thoughts from all of you. Are you bullish on Gen AI, bearish on Gen AI? Do you think this really has the potential that everyone's been talking about in the last couple of years? Do you want to start?
Sure, thanks for setting the context. Like everything else in technology, I don't think once we get let the genie out of the bag, it's ever going to go back in. So as a result of it, Gen AI is here to stay. It is definitely going to be one of the very important technologies that is going to shape the future of business, future of technology, and future of a lot of things that we do. So in many ways, the hype is justified. At another level, the hype is unjustified because of the fact that the time period within which people believe that this will completely transform the industry is probably made too much smaller than what it really eventually will be. As a result of which, beyond the hype cycle of crazy stock valuations, very easy money raising from AIs and stuff like that, it will settle into a place where it will have the usual growth rate of figuring out how this technology both evolves from a tech perspective, from a business perspective, and from an industry perspective. So anybody who has the long-term mindset of what AI will lead you to probably have the opportunity to create long-term value within the ecosystem. People who have a very short-term approach can of course make money or lose money off of anything. So I think that's, in my perspective, a very critical part that people have to look through it, right from the students all the way to the corporate industry, and that's sort of what I think will play out in the next many years and decades to come.
Great. Ravi, you were part of the team that built Kritrim, which was India's LLM, apart from Sarvam, which has also conducted similar experiments. What was your own experience? Are there real use cases beyond us using Gen AI for random stuff, asking random questions when we are bored during the day, are there real enterprise use cases according to you?
Yeah, I think I've seen and interacted firsthand with multiple CEOs across industry verticals, across use cases, and it is just a matter of time. Gen AI is getting embedded as we speak in every application or use case which exists across industries today. So I believe that this is going to change the way existing applications work. We are seeing already on Microsoft products, etc., that how it is changing the way we interact with such products. But also new applications that are being built will completely be rewritten with Gen AI thought first, right? Because it's a foundational technology. Many things that we used to do, like translation or summarization, etc., using the let's call it AI 1.4. If you use Gen AI, the cost of doing it is actually very low, right? And one model can do multiple things, so you don't need a factory of models. So it is foundational in my view, and this transition is happening. It will continue to happen. So it's real. These ups and downs happen. So that's more stock in that sense. But the technology is real and foundational, and it's time to kind of invest deeper.
By the way, if you're a Gen AI startup, you should look at raising money from Ravi, because he's going to make a lot of money this week from the Ola Electric IPO. So take his number before you leave.
Please subscribe to Raise and Ask It.
Okay, that was an unintended plug. But Sanjay, one of the use cases that's often cited when it comes to Gen AI is the customer chatbot, improving the customer service experience, improving the sales enablement experience, like what Salesforce is trying to do with Einstein. Which of these has really helped make my trip? Has it helped you eliminate any jobs so far, replace jobs, move those jobs to other functions? How has this worked out for Make My Trip?
So, too early to talk about job displacement yet, because
can you at least assure us that you haven't displaced jobs?
I think, computers will not replace humans. That is my understanding. I mean, you will be replaced by another human who knows how to use Gen AI better.
Okay.
But I don't think Gen AI is still there taking over human jobs.
So you will still need someone to give the correct prompts.
Yes. So what we are building so there are two parts to it. One is that search eventually will give way to conversations. So that is what the whole trend is looking like that. The second part is that you can have an assistant when you're shopping for travel, for instance, or even the post-sales, when you're talking to customer support. It's better to have a bot at the background. If you're able to do most of, what we do in the Azure application also is exactly that. We are trying to automate as much as possible, so there's less reliance on humans for customer support. I think because of the language models and all, it's made the job, the whole support thing has become easier. But then again, the off cases, the tail end cases, they still have to be handled by a human being. So we are getting efficiencies everywhere. We are getting efficiencies in coding, for instance, with Copilot. We are getting efficiencies in the call center because the entire transcription and the summarization can now happen using a bot, and a lot of intent. There's a high churn in the call center. So if you understand that part of the business, people, every year we have an entirely new set of people in the call center, so it's a very expensive affair to train them and make them experts so they can understand what the customer is talking about, what the intent of the customer is. It's much easier to replace the intent identification part with a bot, and therefore we end up with happier customers. So the error rate will go down. We won't displace, at least not yet, but significant efficiencies in the call center as well.
So will you still need, to hire so many people in call centers? I think the TCS CEO made a comment a few months ago that those gigantic call centers will go away.
We are currently, I don't see that them going away in the near future. I don't think that's going to happen. But they will become more efficient. Likewise for programmers also. I mean, you can say there's code generation happening with AI. I think the programming jobs will not go away. It will just, the programmers who know how to use Gen AI, they will become more efficient. Likewise in the call center, I think you can get more efficiency and therefore a shorter turnaround time for the customer. The customer satisfaction should go up because if the agent, the call center agent is saving 20% of the times in trying to do intent identification and then also in trying to summarize the calls and to transcribe and summarize. All of that, those efficiencies will eventually help the customer also because now you can get a good answer to it very much faster than you would get earlier.
Right. Uma, if you can weigh in on, what else can happen within product and tech organizations when it comes to leveraging some of these new technologies, what is likely to change? Because, he mentioned coding, but even now, there's a lot of skepticism about whether it is generating the right code, what can it get wrong. As he said, it's going to be one human replaced by another human who's perhaps better at leveraging AI.
I'm bullish on Gen AI, innovation and what's coming ahead. And I did code for quite some time and I had a break when I started coding and I used Cloud Engineer, one of the Gen AI tools. And I was able to do it with a long gap and I am extremely impressed with the intelligent coding and as well as debugging and coming up with test cases. And if I had to envision what will happen, I would say that product managers, designers who need to really get the help from the engineering team to show an MVP. They don't need to rely too much on the engineers. They can come up with their own MVP product, show to the customer with a shorter cycle time. And if I have to extrapolate, I would say that previously it used to take 1 year, and now with so much advancement we are able to make releases faster. And now we should
the product release will come down.
Product release, I need to expect 10x improvement 5 years down the line, and also with quantum, etc. I do expect that if we are able to bring the large language models on a small form factor device, it's going to really it's going to be extremely powerful. Imagine that entire computing is on a small device and you are able to get all the help that you need on your mobile phone, and it's not going to be restricted to any software engineering per se, but it's going to be, the applications are it's huge. I can go on and on, but I'll stop here.
Right. Professor Satyaprasad, you are from one of Bengaluru's best known education institutions. What kind of conversations happen these days on campus among students when they see all these emerging technologies? Because every day, every week, there is something new to be excited about.
Actually, I brought a show and tell because this is the latest copy of the newsletter that gets published. We do it roughly about once a quarter. And it literally takes us about 2 weeks to design the cover. Right? And it's done by a BDes, Bachelor of Design student. This thing was done through Generative AI. Srijita, who did this, told me it took her about 4 hours to do this.
Wow.
So the conversation on the campus today,
I think media should be worried more than anything else.
There's going to be a lot of other disruptions that happen, right? And there's going to be a nice transformation.
So the content was written by students or done?
Yeah, it's completely done by students, and what we try and do is we try and get people from engineering backgrounds, design, and others who like to write and bring ideas into fore. We get them to interview people from both within the campus as well as outside the campus. So the conversation is heavy, in terms of being able to generate some of the coolest stuff. People in 6th Sem, having consulting jobs that make, $50 an hour, $100 an hour for startups in California, right? So you have a wide range of spectrum, and you've seen this in the intake, where most colleges, in fact, I met a colleague from a peer of mine from Vijayawada, and he was saying most of the intake is ending between CSE and AML, and pretty much everything else has disappeared. I'm not saying that's a good thing, but that's essentially, the conversation is heavily dominated by AI, the generative AI, the VR, AR, blockchain, all the fun stuff that we all like to keep saying, but that's what's happening on the campus these days.
Wow, so this was generated using Copilot, this glitch?
No, I think it was Stable Diffusion.
Oh wow.
This was done on Stable Diffusion.
This is really cool, very nice.
And the whole topic is on VR, and that's why you have the headset with the person's looking at.
So that's the efficiency I'm talking about. I mean, something that takes 2 weeks, if you can do it in 4 hours, that's the efficiency you can get. So you will still need a designer.
The one thing that we do ask students to not do is just put the whole thing on ChatGPT and have them generate it, right? Because it's easy to spot. You can find out if it's been written by Chat. But we encourage people to actually do use ChatGPT or any of the other flavors that are around. But interesting times.
Right. Since the theme is Gen AI and beyond, what would and beyond mean for you in terms of the other disruptive technologies that we should look out for, that we should be worried about, prepared for?
I think one thing that's coming up really close on the heels of AI is quantum computing, right? So the favorite three-letter word is PQC, post-quantum cryptography, right? So it takes probably 100 years to break a 1024-bit encryption, maybe more. Sanjay can, give us the exact number. But with quantum, you can actually bring it down to about 5 minutes. So all the 256-bit encryption that we have today, which serves us well for our debit cards, credit cards. So if quantum were to come, you can essentially break it in a couple of minutes. So there are a whole bunch of things that are coming around called the post-quantum cryptography and related areas, right? And how do you bring that in? So that's another one area. The other thing is, as I think Uma alluded to it, all of the machine learning requires very heavy compute. So one of the key areas of research is it's called machine learning on the edge, right? How do you take smart devices and how do you get very complex models to run in an efficient way so that you can actually get results in the field? A good example would be the automatic number plate recognition, right, ANPR. So that the camera is sitting there in the traffic intersection that we all have come to love and hate. That thing has enough intelligence to be able to raise the challan right there. It doesn't have to go to the cloud, generate a challan. So these are 2-3 areas that a lot of us in the academia working with the industry and the students are super excited about.
Right. Uma, I want to get your thoughts on this. In terms of where India is when it comes to some of these disruptive technologies, the house is divided on that as well, right? So Ravi would be the kind of person who would say that we should start with the foundational layer. We should have our own LLMs trained on Indian data sets. But on the other hand, you also have people like Nandan Lekri who believes that India will be the AI use case capital of the world. Where do you stand, Mr. Lekri?
I believe that, just like, UPI, we had our own special requirements. India, as a country, we have multiple languages, we have cultural differences. If I ask ChatGPT to write a poem, it might write in a different way, and I may have my own Bollywood kind of music preferences. So I strongly believe that we should invest on innovating and have our own models, which will do some of the regional specific things for our requirements, including the multiple language support. So voice AI can never be successful in India if we do not innovate right now. So instead of using, I'm sure with every other social media like WhatsApp, everything getting integrated on AI, we will be first in adopting this technology. But if we want to make sure that we are innovating, we need to have our own models engineers where we have our requirements satisfied. So I will go for having a model.
Right. Ravi, your take on that? Because we've seen billions in capital being poured into some of these LLM startups in the US. France is turning out to be a big hub because of companies like Mistral. Should India really be wasting so much money on that? And do you see venture capital pouring in that much money?
I think it's an investment which needs to be made. It will not be wasteful because, I was mentioning that there are many use cases which are India-centric. For example, and these models should not be seen in the context of only text generation or image generation. The world models that are being created right now, which is multimodality based, are used in self-driving cars. Our roads are very different. We have laneless driving, random features on the road, etc. Right? So our contexts are different. Our use case, like the multilingual context, is different. So there is a need. So the question is, should we wait or should we do it ourselves? Right? So that's the entrepreneur's choice, whether they wait to have the models which have these capabilities and then build applications, or we build a model out and then improve from there and get other people to build on that model. So my belief is I'm on the other side, which is it is an investment which is a must do. And that's the use case context. If you look at the cultural nuances in that context, if AI and applications are getting embedded in all applications that we use, like WhatsApp has it, all products that we use for office productivity has it becomes a window. It is like media, it is our window to the world. So, in our writing, when we are writing an email or whatever, these cultural nuances get lost. We are getting generation from applications which are not trained in our nuances, right? So this can have a long-term impact on us, which is less understood right now, but I believe it will become very apparent. Okay? So it's
Right. Your view? Rohit?
I very much agree with the panelists here. My perspective
Is there no one who disagrees with the others?
My perspective is that it's not going to be one or the other. It's going to be both. Right? Nature of how our industry has evolved in India, we definitely will be basically core in terms of utilizing the technology to create the next set of experiences, solutions, and everything else. That's going to happen on its own. Right? We don't have to try very hard because we are the tech sort of capital of the world, our emerging is one. I think where we really need to invest is in the lab, which is to make sure that this time we won't not just become users of it, but actually start becoming generators of it in terms of making sure that we have our own interests. Because we have to understand a little bit about geopolitics around this. The geopolitics around this is going to be very tricky. Right? US is already restricting, after the supercomputer, this is the first time US is actually restricting export of technology to other countries. Right? So it will become almost like a national security requirement from a chip perspective, from a technology perspective. Europe has started building their own stuff because they said that they want to compete with the US and have that, make sure that. So it's going to be at some point become a very critical national interest. It's not going to be just about business. As a result of it, it is extremely important that we start investing in it in parallel to being the technology center which uses the technology.
Right. Sanjay, I also want to get your thoughts. You've spoken about how you're leveraging AI in different functions. What about AR, VR? How are you making that into the customer experience? Are you seeing an appetite for that?
So, see, there are two parts to it. First of all, when it comes to travel, I think travel is primarily experiential. So AR, VR, obviously it's more virtual than experiential. So in travel, I don't see much use. For gaming and all, I can understand. Secondly, for India, those gadgets are damn expensive. You can't afford. So it cannot become mainstream yet. And therefore, I think interesting technology for gaming and all, and people can afford, but it's not going to become mainstream anytime soon.
Right. Sir, your thoughts on the whole LLM versus use case debate?
I agree with the first panelist, right? I think this could be both.
Not a question of either or, we need to do both.
I think there's room for both, and there are now, I think, instead of just the LLMs, there are also SLMs that are now coming into fold, right? Which is to say, how do I, not just have the large language models, how are some of the smaller ones that are out there? I think it's too early to call and say that there will be one or the other. I think there's enough room. And one of the things that I like to call out, which is slightly orthogonal, allow me to digress, is AI has been around for quite some time.
Yeah.
Here's a fun fact I just looked up to say, what was the time that AI has been on the Gartner hype cycle? it's been on the Gartner Hype Cycle for 2 decades. Right? And that's how young it is or how old it is, depending on how you want to see. So I think it's too early to call, and I think the way I like to frame this one is from a sovereignty standpoint. The other is from the point of view of business models. If you look at any of the large, magnificent 7 who have enough control over the AI, nobody's making money yet.
Yeah.
It will make money at some point in time, there will be a business model. But until such time, I think it's too early. And ultimately, it's either the national interest or the business interest that will help, drive this discussion one way.
I think the sovereignty question is also important.
So, see, I think valid question to ask whether India should build their own models or not. I think it's too late in the game now. That ship has sailed already. The game has been played and won or lost.
No, but many people have a contrary view that it's not too late. So, I think we were talking to the CEO of GitHub recently, and he drew parallels with the browser era, right? I mean, there was Netscape and a whole lot of browsers years before Google became mainstream. So he actually said that we are still in that Netscape zone when it comes to AI. We haven't discovered a winner yet.
Right. No, so I'm talking about there are 2 aspects of Gen AI. One is the GPU part, and one is the language part. Both of these things are already, we know who's leading.
Yeah.
And from a foundational model perspective, I don't think it makes sense to reinvent the wheel. The other part that people agree to both the sides, and I think, you can take the nuances of India and then superimpose those nuances on top of the already available models, language models. But you don't have the luxury, and I don't think anyone is going to fund that kind of project in India. So it's not happened so far. That kind of investment has not gone in the ecosystem. I don't see that happening anytime in the future.
I think Uma has a point of view and you have a point of view.
I feel that academia can come in here, help us train that large data sets that we need for these models, and there could be an industry and academia collaboration in this.
You can have it right, you have industry and academia.
So I do feel the need for this, whether we superimpose or have, and I think what I feel is that it should adapt to our needs in India, where we have this, multiple languages, our nuances are different. So if we have, then we are more self-sufficient rather than saying I will only develop applications. I don't buy the argument that I will only develop applications on top of it, because if you're going to develop applications, then your flexibility is lost. So.
Sorry.
Everyone has a point of view.
I think the question of money is very important, right? I think you said not making enough money and nobody's produced business results out of it. I think that money doesn't get paid on the first day, right? So the end of the day,
every startup knows this. Any startup,
I think if you look at it, there is tremendous amount of money. There's a company out there whose valuation has $3 trillion, right? So definitely there is money out there in the system that you can use to fund your long-term value creation of what you're trying to do. When e-commerce started in the world, it took the first company about 12 years to turn profitable, right? I think Gen AI can become profitable much earlier than that. So money is there in the system for you to use if we have the right level of investment in terms of what we are trying to do. So right set of companies, I love the fact that we are doing crypto and everything else, because there is no dearth of money. There is dearth of ideas and ability for you to take a long-term approach to it. And India's markets are getting to a state where they are in for long-term growth. As a result of which money will come if we have the ideas to do this.
Sanjay, you
I have a quick point here. I mean, it's not really about the money. Where is the corpus of data? I mean, if you look at how much data do we have in the regional languages in India? How many Hindi books, how many Hindi newspapers, how many Hindi articles, for instance, can you find on the internet? Where do you get the data to build your model? I mean, there's nothing there.
There is data. There is a lot of publicly available data. There are regional newspapers in every language for years going back. cost of training a model, right? Or doing Gen AI, because it has been plummeting. The cost of training a model is plummeting by orders of magnitude. The cost of inferencing is also plummeting, and that is where research is heading.
You had a point of view.
I'm going to take a slightly contrarian view, right? I mean, there's
Contrarian view to who?
in general, we're talking about money, we're talking about data, but there's another aspect to consider, right? If you look at the current infrastructure, the hardware infrastructure that are required to train large models and even the inferencing part, right? I mean, it's extremely expensive, and if you ask me, I spent 20 years in the chip industry, it's just not sustainable. I mean, the kind of money that people are locating data centers next to a nuclear power. So that's it. I mean, that's not an exaggeration. So I think one of the things that we're going to see in terms of how this thing evolves, and that's very relevant for this audience, is, did anybody know that NVIDIA would be here today 15 years ago? I mean, I worked at Intel back then, and we poo-pooed them and said, NVIDIA has no chance. Right? And we had so many other graphical things. But 15 years later, the landscape has completely changed. So one of the things I'd like to argue, and I brought this little toy along, it was built 32 years ago.
I have to check what were you carrying each time there's a different show and tell.
One more. So this is an analog neural network, ANN. That was a fancy thing in the 90s. And this is my master's thesis, and he said, the world is going to be conquered by the analog neural networks. This is not even there in the vocabulary today, but it's now coming back. There's something called the spiking neural networks, because the current method of chips, CPU, GPU plus, throwing all the other stuff, that's just, in its current form, we can throw more money at it, electricity, but if you want to do this for the next 15, 20 years, I mean, newer methods that come, right? So I think one of the things that's going to shape the narrative is also, is this sustainable? Can we do this where, the cost of, getting an inference or cost of training models, and like you were referring to, let's say you want to train this in 30 languages. Are you going to do the same thing over and over again using the expensive ways? And who knows, NVIDIA might even, do something with this. So I think there is going to be enough to be said in the coming years that will shape the narrative of large versus small, data versus. So I think it's too early to tell, and this is only 32 years old, and I think there's more to come.
Right. Oma, what would your message be for people in the room who are studying AI with a sense of excitement but also nervousness, because every week there is some new breakthrough technology. You again have to unlearn, relearn, maybe listen to one more podcast, watch one more video, read one more document. It's like you're on a constant treadmill because the pace of change is so rapid. How does one keep up with it?
Yeah, I think in the Gen AI space, I think it's really rapidly changing, and it is. I am bullish personally on Gen AI, so I would request everybody in the academia to make sure that have prompt engineering as a mandatory course that everybody takes, irrespective of the discipline you are, whether you are in engineering or any other. In arts, that's one request. And then for the engineering students, I would like to say that you need to have basics of programming and have the basics of artificial intelligence, data science, and other blockchain technologies that are coming. But fundamental thing is be curious, have problem solving, because in whichever case, you need human intelligence to solve complex problem, and collaboration between machine and human is going to be reality. So let's get trained for that.
Is this already a mandatory course, for instance, at PS universities? That's something you're considering, prompt engineering. And do you think it's something that arts and science students can also learn?
Yeah, and I don't think prompt engineering is anything related just specific to CS or AI. As Uma pointed out, I think it's a fairly broad set of things. In fact, this would be taught even to BBA, Bachelor of Business Administration, where we have a 4-year thing called BBA with analytics, where the prompt part of it, whether you're in marketing or HR or any of the other domains, the prompt is, it's like Google search, it's whether it's ChatGPT or a Copilot, it's part of it. I don't believe there's a course per se, but this is an integral part of many of the course offerings.
Right. Sanjay, when you hire a techie for your team, or Rohit, when you do it, what kind of technology skills do you look for today?
See, we just saw that.
I mean, is there a stronger chance of them landing a job if they say we have done this from Coursera or that from DeepMind?
We look at, the broader thing here is learnability. How eager are you to learn things beyond what has been taught in the college? So, and these are some of the, your learnability is manifested if you do some of these courses, that you are curious. That is all the indication that you get. Otherwise, I think whatever the colleges are doing today, I mean, first of all, if the industry believes that only 40% readiness is there, which we just saw in the presentation, early presentation, I think even that part is not being done properly yet. So let's not add too many courses to the industry. I think data science and AI and Gen AI, that can happen later. But at least the prompt engineering and beyond prompting, I mean, it's nothing. If you can express yourself well, you can write a good prompt. Teach them English, teach them language, teach them maths, basic maths, which is all about neural networks is nothing but, I mean, it's all maths and linear algebra. So teach the fundamentals, because these things will keep changing. Prompting is there today, but there are companies who are automating the process of prompting also. So things will change very rapidly on this. I don't think we are there yet. Just the core, make them good generalists. Well-informed maths, English, whatever you learn in primary school, just carry it all the way through to B.Tech.
Right.
I think just building on that, fundamentally, technology changes every few years, sometimes few months as well.
Now it's every week or
Almost.
every month or every fortnight.
So it's extremely difficult to hire based on have you taken this course or not taken this course at MBA level. So fundamentally, you have to go focus on hiring people who are fundamentally able to adapt to the technology space and move forward. And to your earlier point, if you feel threatened or uncomfortable about Gen AI disrupting, leave this field, because this field is not for you. Because that is how technology has been for the last 30, 40 years. Right? It has constantly evolved itself in terms of what you're doing. If you're just going after the shiny object, like being able to use it, I want this job only if I'm going to work on Gen AI. You have only limited number of projects on Gen AI. So as a result of which, you have to understand that it is extremely important for you to come to the right mindset to make sure that you are able to disrupt your own job in a very short period of time. And if you're not willing to do that, whether it is Gen AI, whether it is programming language, whether it is platforms you're working on, you're probably not the right fit for our organization. Right? That is the core aspect that we look at it, and since Gen AI is the latest part of it, we want to make sure every single engineer in our organization is capable of understanding that. We did a little bit of an experiment recently. So I had my top architects actually run a session on Gen AI, and we invited everybody. We started from the basics. Like Sanjay is saying, we started from matrix multiplication, something I learned back in 11th or 12th grade. And the people who were most excited about that were all the young kids, interns, people who didn't show up, were the managers. Right? Now, if I had the option of letting go of them without actually hurting my business, I would have probably let them go of that particular day. Because they feel, things are all fine, chalta rahega. I'm the manager, you will be the most disrupted job in a very short period of time.
I'm saying this to a room full of managers.
Please get on the board.
Sanjay?
I completely agree with what Rohit said. Absolutely. The foundations, core maths, core English, basic English, if you can express yourself well, I think just be a good problem solver. That is what engineering is all about, and then things will change.
I believe, in the industry, the current problem is when you want to introduce any new tools, including co-pilots, there is resistance, right? It's resistance with the engineers. I think what I would like to see is more adaptability and open to change. If you are not open to change,
because tomorrow you will say, I only need the co-pilot, I don't need you.
yeah, but then that's the reality. So you better see what's your value proposition, right? Problem solving, visioning, strategic acumen, product thinking. Those things are not going away, right? So when when some tool gets introduced, including Copilot, you can see like 70% not having they don't want to do. The resistance is so high. So I think if at all, if there is anything, I would say with GenAI emergence and new tools coming, be adaptable to change and look at your value proposition in a different form rather than the traditional, I know, I am the best coder. Actually, machine has come which can code better than you, can comment better than you, can test better than you. So just realize that and be open to change. That's what I would say. And that's the requirement. When I say prompt engineering, it's all about like, how are you going to interact in English language and say, hey, I want to develop a chatbot for insurance or for anything. And then let it do, and then you say, hey, I want this better enhancement. So you are learning how to prompt a machine. Just like, when it was assembly language to C language to Java, and now you are going to speak in English to write your code. So be adaptable.
Be adaptable. Oh, we have 4 minutes. I'd like to take a couple of audience questions in case we have a mic in the room. Does anyone want to ask any questions? If you can just introduce yourself.
Well, if you have any questions, you can please raise your hand and we'll have the mic being passed. Well, looks like nobody has a question.
Everyone is sleeping after the meal. People who had a full meal.
I will ask the question. I'll ask the question. Sorry, yes. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
People have been in this industry and using certain technologies for the last 10 years. I know you've been saying you have to be adaptable, you have to be more proactive, but who've been there for the last 10 years, and there are people here, managers, what do you advise them?
Rohit, I'm scared of asking
Rohit has said enough already.
I'm scared of asking Rohit anything.
I'm not asking you to send everybody out, but what is a better solution for it?
Yeah, Rohit, what's a better solution to managers who are open?
I think it doesn't matter manager or IC or anything. You were saying this question that to say, oh, if I use Copilot, I will not be needed anymore. If you cannot disrupt your own job, don't be in this industry. Because this industry disrupts itself every few years. Whether it is a manager, whether it's a leader, there are people sitting out here, CEOs, or CTOs. If you don't know how to disrupt yourself and still be useful in the industry, this industry is not for you.
Thank you.
Just like to add a quick thing to help you, right? One of the things that we run is a Harvard Managed Mentor. That's a program that is run through Harvard University, but any university can take it. It's really, really good. It completely runs in an asynchronous mode. Reasonable, and it helps you to develop the right mindset that some of the panelists have been talking about, right? So the hard question is, there's nothing soft about soft skills, right? In fact, they're the hardest. Learning to code, learning to fix an engine is that much more easier than saying I'll become more adaptable or become creative. So one of the things I'd like to recommend is look at something like a Harvard Management, but I'm sure there are lots of other courses like that. And it's not just a course; it's actually a program with some guided mentorship and other things, and we run this HMM at CIE as well.
So for managers, I would like to say, look at your day job, and if there are simple routine tasks that can be automated, please automate yourself and look at doing creative problem solving on a lighter note. Okay. Anyone else? Okay.
So I'm Melvin from Cisco. So I've been working as an HR. So I have a few questions with respect to this artificial intelligence, just on the general level. So right now, whatever AI we are using, like PA, so that's then general intelligence, which things are par with us, like human beings, and then super intelligence. I think we are on the roadblocks to that. But as you said, robots as long as now they can't think strategically. Maybe not now, but how about in the future? Maybe 10 years or 15 years opposed to the AI being introduced right now, right? How about that then? What will be their intelligence? Then that will be a major disruption among the jobs, right? Then they would be also able to think as like human beings. Because not only with respect to IT segment AI being used, but also with respect to neurological segments, genetic science, and we have Elon Musk was planning neurons, right? So as long it is also helping the person who is using the neuron to work efficiently, as long as it's also backtracking the data, right? How the human brain is actually working on the different parts of human brain, how it can be cross-functionally integrated into the robots as well as things, right? So how will you address that?
This is a real futuristic question, right? I mean, there's a movie called HAL 2001 that came out in the 90s, and that talked about something like this almost 25 years ago. I think it's impossible to predict. Would anybody have predicted in 1950 that man would land on the moon? And the answer would be absolutely no way. But then man has landed on the moon and then gone beyond, and now Elon Musk, since you brought him up, I mean, is looking to colonize Mars. So I think it's too early to call out and say this will not happen or this will happen. Neuralink, which you mentioned, right, is now able to take a completely paralyzed person and get him to have the brain implant and then be able to move. So I think there's, if you're a techie or if you're in HR, I mean, these are exciting times to do because I think there's change. When there's change, I think there's opportunity. There's also a threat, but there's also an opportunity, and I think it's for us to kind of work together, right? It's the industry, the academia, the government coming together to really make this thing work for the society. Otherwise, AI is like Brahmastra. If not handled correctly, I mean, this thing can just destroy pretty much everything, right? So I think it's our collective interest to try and see how we can shape the future by. One of the things I just wanted to quickly say is, I think we need not the CEO, chief ethics officer is something that we need if you're talking about AI. Right? It's not about execution. AI can do it for us. The real question is, where's the ethics in all this?
Right. Time up, so very quick rapid fire. Sadhya, you go first. One AI skill every 21-year-old should have today.
The entrepreneurial mindset.
Uma, one AI skill every 41-year-old should have today.
It's basically creativity.
Okay. Sanjay, one job that AI or other disruptive technologies won't take away.
Basically, we're working with humans. That part will go. The relationship, human emotions, that will never go.
Okay. Ravi, one unimaginable job that will be created by one of the disruptive technologies.
I think it's being imagined the ethics managing AI from an ethics point of view.
Rohit, your wildest disruptive tech prediction for the next 2 years.
Next 2 years? I think holographic representation of somebody who walks in through a solution like a human being.
So this panel will have all our holographs of hologram.
Yeah, I mean, instead of me, it would be my hologram. We'll do a better job.
Great. On that note, thank you all so much and a big round of applause for us.